What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Kick-Ass Podcast. I hope you're having a great day, evening, whatever part of your day you are at. I hope it's going good. Today we are here to talk about the latest updates from the Vince McMahon investigation. I feel like I'm beating a dead horse at this point, but it wouldn't be fair if we just bring up a huge monumental story like this and then just leave it halfway through, right? And it seems like we have a little bit, maybe we're heading towards a little bit of a resolution, so that's why I wanted to get into that after the WWE reported their latest quarterly financials late last night, early this morning. We'll definitely get into that first, and then we'll go over Monday Night Raw from last night. It was another fun show. The excitement is still very much prevalent in each of these shows for Raw and SmackDown, and hopefully NXT here soon. I believe their Heatwave show is tonight, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So that hopefully will be a good turnout for them. And ratings-wise, they seem to have been trending upwards a little bit. I briefly skimmed across something a couple of days ago where it looks like their trajectory over the past 3 to 4 weeks has been actually trending upwards. So shout out to them. I do not give them as much time as I probably should. Just the whole 2.0 thing is still kind of hit and miss for me. But, I especially with the Triple H, regime in play now, maybe I'll dive back into it and give it a little bit more time. But with that being said, like I said, we'll definitely touch on the Vince McMahon portion here first, get that shit done and out of the way, and then get into what was another good episode of Monday Night Raw from last night. The article that I'll be referencing today is from the HollywoodReporter.com, so shout out to them for the information. I, at one point, did own stock in WWE. I sold it however long ago. Kind of regretting that a little bit. And like I mentioned on a podcast, probably over a month ago now, probably the second podcast at least relating to this whole Vince McMahon shit going on, but I had referenced at one point the after the information dropped about the investigation for Vince and everything, the stock had actually jumped, I think like 7, if not closing in at 8%, which was just, for me, really surprising. I was kind of expecting it to take a hit. Good thing I'm not in the stock market, like actual business, right? But I was definitely expecting, I mean, not like a drastic hit, but I was expecting at least like a few dollars to be, shaved off per share, but it wasn't. It actually went the exact opposite direction. And I think they're still hovering around $70, $71 per share right now. So take that for what you will, you know what I mean? And I thought it was interesting when I was kind of reading some articles this morning as well, that there was speculation, and it was reported from WWE that creative specifically could take a hit now that Vince McMahon is no longer in play. And I just thought that was very, very comical. And I'll actually address that here. It was mentioned in the reportings, like I said, from earlier this morning. They in this particular transcription is from Yahoo News, their Yahoo.com, obviously, their news section. But when I saw this excerpt from it, I legit just had a little chuckle to myself, because it's like, the people out there who, like, for instance, like, obviously Wall Street and the stockholders and things like that, they don't care about the creative. They don't care about what we watch on TV specifically in regards to the characters, the storylines, who's champion. They may care who's champion as the face of the company, maybe. But, me personally, I think in the grand scheme of things, they couldn't give a shit less, who is doing what on TV. Like, do you really think they care about, like, a Mustafa Ali or a Dana Brooke or the 24/7 championship or anything like that? Like, no, like, they probably don't even know what any of that is, right? So when I read this excerpt, it's another, at first it was, like I said, I had a little chuckle to myself, but it just goes to show you how in tune they are business-wise. But maybe if they just watch the product, on actual, like we actually see on TV, or let me rephrase that, if they actually watch the product that was on TV prior to Vince McMahon stepping down and officially retiring, they would see that did have a big play into numbers, like it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that if you put on a shitty product on TV, or the general consensus is like it's it's not mandatory TV, it's not must-see TV anymore, you can pretty much tune in for the PLEs and things like that, but, for the most part, and, even your casual fan will still go to the show and stuff like that when they come to town, but the eagerness and the want to watch WWE was just fading away, and it's sad, as a wrestling fan, it's sad to see it get to that point. So that's why when they mention, with Vince McMahon stepping back, it could have an adverse effect on the creative. It's like, actually, motherfuckers, like, it's having the exact opposite effect. It's having the best effect imaginable, right? Like, and this is just the beginning. We're 3 weeks into it now, 2 weeks into it or something like that. So it's just the vibe and the energy and just the fun of watching WWE specifically is back, and it's not like Triple H went in there and did a complete 180 of everything that we were watching on TV. It's not like he, dethroned all the champions and did all this drastic shit and everything like that and redid the whole production, new stage. No, it's happening in little waves and little increments, and I think that's exactly how it should. And it's rewarding you for watching each week, because now you have, besides like the actual product, what you're, and the storylines that we're invested in, and we're actually having stories to be invested in, we now get to look forward to see, like, hey, like, what is he going to do with the production value, like, what is he going to do backstage, what kind of camera shots is he going to do? It's just fun, like, everything is up for discussion, up for taking at this point, so it's cool, and it's a cool vibe. So I'm going to get into what they said specifically here. They said, in addition, WWE said, quote, although we believe that no significant business has been lost to date, it is possible that a change in the perceptions of our business partners could occur as a result of the investigation. WWE also noted that until McMahon resigned from the company on July 22nd, he had led the creative team that develops the storylines and the characters for its programming. Taking over as co-CEOs were Stephanie McMahon, previously Chief Brand Officer, and Nick Khan, previously President and Chief Revenue Officer. WWE's creative is now led by Paul Triple H Levesque, EVP of Talent Relations and creative of Miss McMahon's, or creative of Miss McMahon's husband. They said EVP of Talent Relations and creative and Miss McMahon's husband. Obviously, we all know that. Then they go on to say, continue to say, quote, although Mr. Levesque has extensive practical experience with many of our revenue streams and with Ms. McMahon has been critically involved in our business transformation over the past several years, as well as our continuing brand development, these collective changes at the top of our organization are extensive and recent, and it is therefore possible that the loss of services of Mr. McMahon could have a material adverse effect on our ability to create popular characters and create storylines, or could otherwise adversely affect our operations and or financial performance, unquote, WWE said in its amended 10-K filing for 2021. And then they go on to mention the Q2 earnings, which I'll mention here in a second. Yeah, guys, like, I don't know who specifically from WWE said that. They just throughout the article just say WWE said. So I don't know who the spokesperson specifically was, but I mean, like, that's just laughable. Like, come on, like, yes, while I'll give them credit for, or the possibility that it could have an adverse effect business-wise for the reputation, and like, in regards to like advertisers and, WWE selling its content rights, because that at this point is the bulk of their revenue that they make each year and each quarter, is them selling their content rights to different platforms, like, obviously with Fox, with NBC Universal, who's the owner of, like USA Network and those channels, and just with everything else. You have your Peacock, and then of course you have that deal with Saudi Arabia. There's just a lot of different revenue streams that they have, and kudos to them. Brilliant business-wise. So in that respect, yeah, I could see this investigation, and if anything else does come out in the future, anything more, hellacious or anything like that, then yeah, I could, and that's what my thought was too, in regards to like the stock dropping a little bit. I thought maybe if anything, investors may want to, or maybe timid, and they may, because obviously none of us know what is going to come out of an investigation until it's concluded, right? That's the whole point of an investigation. So I could see a lot of businesses and advertisers and companies, big name companies, being hesitant going forward. But it seems, and like I said, we'll get to the main topic here of, in the main development rather. That was my, I guess, concern in the business aspect, but obviously that doesn't seem to be happening. If, and like I mentioned at the beginning part of this, it was just the opposite. Everything ended up going up. So we'll get into the actual article here now specifically. And again, this one is from the Hollywood Reporter, so shout out to them. They go on to say, sports entertainment powerhouse WWE reported its second quarter earnings on Tuesday following several delays due to the discovery of what it had recently said were $19.6 million in previously unrecorded expenses paid by former chairman and CEO Vince McMahon between 2006 and 2022. WWE also said in filings made late Monday and early on Tuesday that an investigation into McMahon and another ex-executive, John Laurinaitis, was, quote, substantially complete, end quote, and repeated that the $19.6 million figure for previously unrecorded expenses. It also detailed $1.7 million in second quarter costs associated with the probe, adding, quote, while we currently anticipate spending approximately $10 million during the remainder of the year related to this investigation, the related costs could exceed this estimate, end quote. They continue to say the company said on its earnings conference call that the $1.7 million was paid by McMahon, adding that he had also agreed to pay, quote, additional reasonable expenses of the investigation not covered by insurance, end quote. And side note, I'm so fascinated to see like the insurance side. Like I would love to get information like just specifically like what insurance would cover and things like this, and just like that whole side. Just me, Ashley, side note, just because I'm a nerd, guys, if you haven't learned that by now. Continuing on, though, they say, as a result of the probe, the company restated past financial reports after, in a recent regulatory filing, saying that it had, quote, determined that such amounts should have been recorded as expenses in each of the periods in which they became probable and estimable, end quote. It said at the time that the amount in unrecorded expenses was not material in any individual period in which they arose, but that the aggregate amount would be if recorded entirely in the second quarter of 2022. WWE also emphasized that at the time, all the underlying unrecorded expenses, quote, were or will be paid by Mr. McMahon personally, end quote. McMahon retired from the company in July amid these discoveries after initially stepping aside from his duties due to a, quote, investigation into alleged misconduct by him and John Laurinaitis, WWE's former head of talent relations. A month earlier, the Wall Street Journal had reported multi-million-dollar settlements paid to women who had affairs with McMahon, who retains a controlling stake in WWE, which is key note there. A special committee of independent members of the WWE board has been conducting the investigation into a special committee of independent members of the WWE board has been conducting the investigation into the alleged misconduct. In a recent regulatory filing, WWE said, quote, it also has received and may receive in the future regulatory, investigative, and enforcement inquiries, subpoenas, or demands arising from, related to, or in connection with these matters, end quote. WWE is now led by McMahon's daughter, Stephanie McMahon, and chairwoman and co-CEO Nick Khan as co-CEOs. And then they go on to continue Stephanie's relationship, which we all know by now. Stephanie in the call called her father a, quote, true founder and entrepreneur, adding that he built the foundation that WWE stands on and prepared us for the future, end quote. Which, I mean, you know, say what you want about the dude, but I mean, she's right about that. I mean, if we're nothing else, just looking at the true definitions of the words there, you know, and the statements there, you know, you can't take that away as much as you can hate everything that has happened, you know, or feel strongly one way or another. Like, you can never take that away. So there's that. And then she continued to say that McMahon is no longer an executive at the company, but his presence is still being felt, I'm sure. The company reported strong quarter two results on Tuesday with total revenue of $328.2 million, up from $265.6 million a year earlier. Live events were up substantially as pent-up demand from the COVID pandemic was on full display, but media rights remained the biggest source of revenue, like I mentioned before. And then there's an interesting little paragraph on Nick Khan that I wanted to close on with you guys. They say Nick Khan told analysts that the company was preparing to begin its next round of rights negotiations and that it expected streaming companies like Netflix, Amazon, and Apple to be interested in their programming in addition to traditional media companies. That demand will only increase with Netflix's ad tier. And then Nick Khan closes with saying, quote, "There's no type of programming more valuable to sponsors than live," end quote. And he is 100% right on that. You know what I mean? Like, that's the heartbeat, really, of WWE's rights deals, is the fact that it's live content. And that's why, with the whole pandemic, it was scary, especially for WWE, you know, and, well, obviously AEW as well, but the wrestling industry, because that's the whole livelihood of wrestling, is live content. Yes, you can put on streaming, or you can put on like package specials, you can do throwbacks from like the Attitude Era, and things like that, but there's only so much you can do with that, you know, and that's not appointment viewing TV, you know, and especially if you have either at that point the WWE Network or Peacock. I can pull up right now anything from the Attitude Era that I want, you know, so why would I need to tune in Monday at 8 p.m. to watch, you know, for instance, like Royal Rumble from 98, if that was the special for that night, when I can easily just go on Peacock and watch it at any point, you know? Yes, there is that idea that you could be watching it, and, you know, you are watching quote-unquote live program, which obviously isn't live, but at least program that's airing at a specific time with possibly hundreds of thousands or millions of other people. So yeah, that idea, and of course being interactive with Twitter and actually being able to talk to people, you know, like that was certain things that got us through the pandemic, but it's not the same. And even for like basketball and sports and things like that, like same thing with them, like you can only do so much with previously aired content. So I think that's pretty obvious but very key. But with that being said, guys, it does appear that we are getting finally towards the end of this whole Vince McMahon investigation thing. So that is a good sign, at least, you know. So hopefully we can wrap this up, completely put all of this in the past, and just move on. And just continue to enjoy the positivity and the good energy coming from the product going forward now. And I think if you haven't actually like tuned into either Raw or SmackDown since Triple H has taken over, I think you owe it to yourself as at one point a wrestling fan, which obviously you are. You would not be listening to this, but you owe it to yourself to give it a shot. You know, like not, for instance, like last night's Monday Night Raw wasn't the most exciting episode that we got since Triple H has been in charge, but it was still a very good, solid episode. There were still reasons to turn in. There were still things to pay attention to. There was still a reason to pay attention to every part of the show. So it's just that's what wrestling is, right? It's storylines that are being built, it's characters being developed and introduced, and leaving little mini cliffhangers. Yes, obviously some weeks are going to be more. I don't even know the proper word, but you're going to be more engaged and more eager to tune into than other weeks. But the bottom line is we have that feeling back. So with that being said, we'll transition into the Monday Night Raw from last night, which again, I thought was a pretty solid show. If you didn't see it, you don't necessarily need to watch the entire 3 hours. I know I just went on this long diatribe of why you should tune in live. But for that being said, you know, like at this point you'd be watching on delay, so you can obviously fast forward through the commercials and all that shit, or if you watch it on Hulu, I believe it's like a 90-minute version of it, and that's probably perfect too, because they're going to give you everything that you need, obviously, right? But we will get into the breakdown here, and looking ahead before we get into it, which is obviously going to tie into the opening segment, next week they're going to be in Toronto, Canada, which is going to be so awesome and such a lively and fun show. And you guys in Toronto better fucking bring it, man, because if you're anything like the fans back in the day, like that was always like a fun and lively and energetic show, especially with everything being the pandemic and everything like that, and all the pent up like frustrations and just energy. Like I said before, I'm not sure if WWE has been to Canada since the pandemic, but even if they did, it was maybe one show. If not, guys, just fucking go crazy, you know, and you guys are gonna have plenty of reasons to do so. With that being said, we'll get into the opening segment, which opened up with the Judgment Day. Rhea Ripley, Damian Priest, and Finn Balor made their way to the ring. Rhea Ripley, I believe, was in the center of the group making their way out, and her fucking presence, man, it's just they say there's not a leader in Judgment Day, but my money is on Rhea. I mean, she looks the part. It's a different vibe. It's just something about it, you know? Like, I'm just really digging the look and the direction of everything so far. And I think, obviously, Triple H probably saved them because there was a lot of questions on where the group was going, especially with Rhea being out for a little while there. Big, dude, just her being back and the group being back, and between her visual appearance and just her presence on the show mixed in with this new look from Finn Balor that we haven't seen pretty much ever in WWE. If I'm forgetting something, please let me know, guys. But I don't think we've ever seen this side of Finn Balor. And then Damian Priest, like, when he speaks on the microphone now, like, he just commands your attention, like, almost in a fearful way. Like, the guy is just so powerful. It's just, I'm very happy that these three are together, because I feel like we're getting a new side from each one of them, and I think that that's very cool. And I, especially, like I said, with the whole Triple H thing, and I hate to keep bringing that up because I don't want it to seem like, oh, we're just, like, you know, like, blowing smoke, but it's true, you know, like, just the creative freedom, probably not 100%, right? But more so than they would have had in the recent weeks. It's nothing but promising. So I'm just definitely looking forward to seeing what ends up becoming of this group and any additions or just how the weeks unfold for them. But Ripley started off the segment here and mentioned pretty much just saying that it's a harsh reality for the Mysterios every week, week in and week out. And I saw this thing where someone had posted, like, taking a screenshot of Rhea pretty much just, like, strangling and just, strangling Dominic with her legs in the top turnbuckle. And someone had posted me or something. It was like, Dominic is everyone on Twitter's, like that everyone essentially wishes that they were Dominic in that situation. And it was just like, the amount of attention and likes that shit got was just comical. And they ain't wrong, you know, they ain't wrong. But Balor stepped up after Rhea kind of started things off there and said everyone loves the Mysterios, but he doesn't get it, and said that the Mysterios would not be there because Dominic had his soul crushed last week in the hands of Rhea Ripley. True, facts. And then Balor continued to boast that he beat Ray last week and solidified that his own legendary status in the business. Priest went on to say that he will be facing Edge on next week's Raw, which is, like I said, going to be in Toronto, which is going to be fucking just amazing. He fired up the crowd by asking if they wanted to see Edge confront him, which of course they obviously would like him to. He said, well, too bad because he's not there. Classic heel move. And said that Edge was in Toronto promoting his first Raw match in the city in over a decade. So, again, another reason to be fucking stoked for Raw next week. Priest went on to say that he would put the final nail in Edge's coffin, I guess, in the coffin of Edge's career, rather. I guess it all would have worked, whatever. And he said that Ripley and Balor would not be there with him. He said Toronto won't be known as Edge's hometown. It'll be remembered as the place of Edge's retirement, which is pretty cool. And then Rey Mysterio did actually end up entering the ring and dropkick Balor from behind. He tried to take down Balor with the head scissors and cleared him from the ring. Ripley stepped up to Rey and encouraged him to hit her, which I'm just fucking waiting for them to just start this intergender, man. Like, Rhea's gonna be perfect for it. Like, come on. Like, and the Mysterios are perfect. Like, it's just, I don't know. I hope that's what we're building up to. But it was a good opening segment. You know, I think this was a good opening segment to set up the stage for next week in Toronto. And it kind of solidified the Judgment Day, kind of gave them a chance to talk shit a little bit more. And I think it was just a win-win. So there's that. The next segment was the women's tag team tournament match. Alexa Bliss and Asuka versus Nikki ASH and Doudrop. Alexa's still bringing the doll to the ring, you know. It is what it is. I get it. She's probably making a shit ton of merchandise money from that. And if so, and obviously so, get your bag, girl. I'm happy for you. I'm ready to see her move on, you know? Like, I want Alexa to be able to do what Alexa wants to do. And if she wants to continue bringing the doll, then hey, you know, whatever. But I feel like we're ready for a change with that. This match was fine. I think it ended up going a little less than 10 minutes here. Nothing too crazy, you know, like it was fine. It was a nice match, but it was just really kind of hard to believe that Nikki ASH and Doudrop are gonna win here. And that's fine, you know, like there's gonna be matches, there's basketball games, football games, where it's pretty obvious who the winner is going to be. And that's what's cool, because, like I said, like, you may think that it's obvious that, for instance, Asuka and Alexa Bliss are going to win, but that creates the whole story for, like, the underdog, and which isn't really the bad guys here, but you guys know what I mean, right? It kind of plays into that doubt, like, okay, you're almost 100% certain that these people are going to win, but there is a slight 1% chance that the other team could win. That all being said, that was not the case here, and we obviously knew going in that Alexa Bliss and Asuka were going to take the W here, and they did. Moving on after that, we saw Theory for the first time in 2 weeks. He actually had a death in the family. I believe it was his uncle who passed away. So thoughts and prayers to him and his family. Very sorry to hear about that, and hope that he's hanging in there. It's obviously not something that you're going to get over in 2 weeks, but I hope he's in an okay mindset, and I hope he's just able to focus on the good times and the positivity, and just able to kind of take it day by day. So shout out to Theory, and I personally appreciate him returning so soon. I think it was made obvious that him and his uncle were really close. So, and I mean, not that you even need to justify any type of relationship, but it sucks even more so when you're even that much closer with the person. So just thoughts and prayers to him, and hope he's hanging in there for, as much as possible. But Theory was interviewed backstage with Kevin Patrick. He said that, or he obviously had the Money in the Bank briefcase, and said that he made a slight miscalculation at SummerSlam, but he doesn't make mistakes. He claimed that he's a tougher and wiser version of himself because of what happened, and started to talk about the next time he tries to cash in. That cued Dolph Ziggler to show up, and he said that he's been everywhere that Theory has been. He said the difference has, or in history-wise, like winning the Money in the Bank briefcase, cashing in, or trying to cash in, all that good stuff. He said the difference between the two of them is that he earned the contract and it wasn't handed to him, and that's why it's mattered to him when he cashed in and became World Heavyweight Champion. Theory says Ziggler probably won't be around when he cashes in. Theory calls Ziggler, quote, an over-the-hill, no-title-having has-been, unquote, which was, whatever. It's pretty funny. Theory said that once he cashes in successfully, he will keep winning and won't screw up the rest of his career like Ziggler has. Ziggler headbutted Theory, and they fall heading into the break. It was really cool that because as they were heading into the break, they fell into the camera, which is how they transitioned into the commercial break, which I thought was just really cool. They came back from the break, and they showed footage of Theory and Ziggler continuing their brawl that happened during the break, which, again, I thought was really cool. Just another little production note, and just something that we wouldn't have seen a couple weeks ago. And that's why I said earlier, it makes you want to tune in and watch the entire 3 hours, just for little things like that. Like, yes, and this is the perfect example for what I was saying earlier. Yes, this isn't something that was, like, major or anything detrimental to the show or anything like that, but it's a fun, different change, and it's just something slight that just adds up. So that was one of the things I was kind of referencing earlier. After that, Sarah Schreiber interviewed Ciampa and The Miz backstage. Ciampa said he came to Raw to become a champion, and that's what he'll do next time he gets an opportunity. The Miz said Ciampa would become champion if it wasn't, or The Miz said Ciampa would have been champion, I say that 5 times fast, if it wasn't for AJ Styles interfering in the match. Miz and Styles were given a title match as a reward, and he smells collusion. The Miz presented Ciampa with a laminated card featuring the two of them on a chain, kind of mocking Logan Paul's Pokemon, whatever card. Ciampa said it was awesome, and Miz said, no, we are awesome. And then they headed to the ring in their matching gear. And I never in a million years would have pegged Miz and Ciampa, first of all, even being together or being entertaining, and it's just working. Yes, it's not like I don't want to see this going on for 6-8 months or anything like that, but for now and for the time being, it's great, and I think it's a great way to introduce Ciampa to the main roster. And I'm just waiting for the day that Ciampa turns on Miz. So I love it. It's a win-win for me. Next up was the tag team match of Ciampa and The Miz versus Mustafa Ali and Cedric Alexander. I love this little tag team match. It was, I think, again, a little less than 10 minutes, but longer than it would have been. I love seeing Mustafa Ali and Alexander. I keep wanting to say Cedric the Entertainer, but I didn't slip up, and in my brain it's thinking that. Just not that you guys cared about that, but if you guys were slipping up on that, or that's where your mind went, or if it's just me because I haven't had enough coffee yet, then there's that as well. But just great action here. I really enjoyed this tag team match. I just love seeing Ali and Alexander. First of all, it's a tag team. I think if you're not really going to do anything with them individually right now, they make a fantastic tag team. Kind of a throwback to their 205 Live days. And it was a good team to go against Ciampa and The Miz. And like I said, right now, Ciampa and The Miz being together is just another good addition to the tag team division, which we desperately need across the board in WWE. And like I said, if you're not doing anything with Ali and Alexander, you might as well tag them up and have them start their journey as well. Me personally, before I move on, I do hope that we end up seeing whatever version and whatever character that Ali had created that he presented to Vince McMahon and was apparently shot down, or just wasn't, they just weren't either, they didn't either like the character or they didn't want to do it, or whatever the issue or the reasoning was. It was just nixed, but there were some, I think Ali himself specifically released like a either 2 to 4 minute video of what he had recorded and put together, and it was just so well done, and you could see there was an actual idea there. So give Triple H time, and I hope that that does get addressed. I hope that actually does become a thing. So we'll see, but that's just kind of, that was one of the things I thought of looking in there or watching this tag team match last night. I was just like, man, yes, I love them as a tag team. I think it's a great idea. But I hope eventually Ali does get that opportunity to debut that character, because he had put a lot of time into it, and I trust Ali's judgment, and I trust his creativity. So looking forward to seeing that hopefully in the future. But moving on here, it was one of my favorite moments of the show, and just little shit like that, or like this rather, just tickles me. The broadcast team had recapped Kevin Owens taking out Ezekiel with a powerbomb onto the ring apron last week. Smith had mentioned that Ezekiel had multiple injuries and would be a long recovery. They showed a photo of Ezekiel in a hospital bed with family members, and it was Elias dressed up as various people. Please, guys, go look for it. Go find it, obviously, on Twitter, Instagram. It's just the funniest shit. Like, it's the corniest and just, like, cheesiest shit, but that's why it just tickled me the most. Ezekiel's father, for instance, name was Ernie Jr. It was just great. It was just great. And I was kind of hoping we would get, like, a little just reference from Kevin Owens. I'm glad we did it, we've seen the promo that we got, but it's just with how crazy Kevin Owens has been going, or had been going over the past few months, like, I'm sure this would have just, like, drove him over the edge. So maybe it's a good thing he didn't. But after that, we had a segment where Drew McIntyre was walking backstage and walked past a small trash can that was on fire. A group of producers were gathered around the fire trying to put it out. Another just interesting thing, last week it was the small car wreck into just that random post, and this week it's a small fire. I hope the 24/7 championship was in that. But nonetheless, moving on. We saw Wale in the crowd. He is a DC native, so shout out to Wale. If you don't like Wale, I don't know. Like, you must not like lyrics. But McIntyre made his way to the entrance after that without the sword, guys, which this is another fucking promising sign. I hope we are done with the sword. A lot of people don't feel as strongly about this sword as I do, but if you know me, you know I do. I can't stand the sword. Like, just be done with it, bro. Like, just be done with it. And I feel bad. Part of me feels bad shitting on it because the sword's name is Angela, and that's his mother's name, and his mother's passed away, so part of me feels bad for that, but, like, you're not going to do anything with the sword, like, or do anything to, like, an individual with the sword. Obviously, not saying that I want him to, but it's like, it's just like, what's the point? Like, you've already chopped the ropes at this point, like, you've chopped the table, like, you can't do anything else with it, dude, so just, like, leave it backstage, like, creative, let him be done with the sword, like, please. And that's my little rant for the week. But McIntyre came out and said that he addressed that he's not on Raw, mentioned that the champion is not on Raw, which I have mixed feelings about that being brought up again, but I'm gonna table that for now. And said that he was obviously looking forward to his Clash at the Castle match, and mentioned that there were reports coming out of a lower back injury that he has been suffering, and he said it's true, but it's mostly because he's been carrying the load of 20 men for the last 3 years in and out of the ring. McIntyre says he does it with a smile on his face because it's not a job, it's his dream. He listed potential challengers he could defend the title against, including Ciampa, AJ Styles, Seth Rollins, and Karrion Kross. That is when Kevin Owens made his entrance with the microphone in hand. I can't even say it now. I'm just going to say Drew. Drew mentioned Owens as a potential challenger. Owens said it was convenient that he mentioned him once he came out. Owens accused McIntyre of trying to be something he's not, and mocked the loud voice he uses, and said that he sometimes carries a sword and wears a kilt like it's medieval times. And only Kevin Owens can say shit like that and make it serious yet comical. You know what I mean? Owens continued to say that he knows who he is and what he is, and he's as real as it gets in the business. He said he got goosebumps on his way to the building because he realized it was the same venue where he and Sami Zayn fought in a match that they still talk about 6 years later, which was at Battleground. I actually watched that match recently. Fucking tremendous. Like, go back and watch that, guys. It was just so well done. Obviously from 2016. Owens continued to say that it was time to bring back the version of himself that they called the prize fighter. Love it. Owens entered the ring and said he was going after all the title belts. He said the winner of McIntyre versus Reigns has a problem because he's going to face the undisputed WWE Universal Champion. McIntyre says he knows exactly who he... And in my little recap here, I didn't mention, but Owens had mentioned that he hasn't held a title in 5 years. And I hadn't realized that, and that's insane. Like, that's just blasphemy at this point. McIntyre says McIntyre was fired up at this point and said that he knows exactly who he is. He said I missed out as well. Sorry guys. Kevin Owens had mentioned that Kevin Owens didn't mention it, but Karrion Kross had mentioned last Friday on SmackDown that McIntyre and Reigns are the chosen ones. So McIntyre actually brought it up here, which I thought was a nice little kind of tie-in and threading here. But McIntyre said that he knows exactly who he is, and said someone called him the chosen one. He said that he was called that 15 years ago, got fired, and had to work his way back. He spoke about beating some of the big names, and that he never wants to be called the chosen one again. He mentioned Brock Lesnar, Goldberg, specifically Randy Orton, and it's true, and I love this fight. He said this with so much fire and passion, just like pouring out of him, like the veins were popping out of him. Like, you guys have to see this segment. Please do whatever you got to do to see this segment. McIntyre closed with saying he doesn't care if Owens is a prize fighter or a superstar. They are wrestlers in a wrestling ring, and challenged him to wrestle. And then Owens actually agreed to the match, and we actually got a match, which I was not expecting. The most important line here, they are wrestlers in a wrestling ring, was actually said on Monday Night Raw. That's how you know change is here, guys. That's how you fucking know. Like, that statement itself was just, it kind of gave me chills a little bit, like, it sounds probably crazy to say out loud, or for you guys to hear that, but man, like, it's just the simple shit and the littlest things, and I'll continue to say this, because I just appreciate it so much. The little things, and that's why I was so frustrated, like, not being able to say wrestling or wrestler. Like, that's what you fucking are. That's what you're doing. Like, you're not, yes, sports entertainment can be the umbrella, but you're still wrestling. You're in a wrestling ring. Like, you're wrestlers. Like, it's just insane. But I love that segment. I think they stole the show. I think it was so well done. I love the passion coming from Owens and McIntyre. Just two perfect guys to kind of, and obviously that wasn't scripted, so it's two perfect guys to go out there, kind of play off of bullet points, and show what these guys and gals can actually do if they're just given the opportunity. So I love that. And then the match that we got following up from that was very hard hitting and a very solid match. There was a fun moment where McIntyre hit the white noise, so a nice little shout out to Sheamus there during the match. Just a lot of hard-hitting moves in this match, and I think if you guys check out anything from Raw, I would definitely recommend this, and then another match later on, which we'll get into, but I just loved everything from Drew's opening promo to, obviously, Owens coming out, them going back and forth verbally, and then the physical match, and that Owens actually stayed out there and did the match, and it wasn't some heel just talking shit and then just like saying, oh no, we'll see you next week or something like that, especially with next week being in Canada. So yeah, I really enjoyed this match, and the ending of the match, of course, we didn't get an actual victor here, which it's fine, you know, like it was kind of, I didn't really expect us to, because I didn't even expect the match to happen to begin with. But it ended with the Usos interfering. So Drew McIntyre technically beat Owens by a disqualification. I think it went around 15, 16 minutes there. But at the end of it, Owens actually ended up helping the Usos, looked down at ringside and said, "Tell the tribal chief he owes me one." So that's a nice, interesting little development there. Me, personally, I think if we're talking long term, maybe not 3 months, maybe a month, 2 from now, I could see Owens making his way to SmackDown and helping out his honorary Uso, best friend Sami Zayn. Because I feel like it's one of those things where, yes, Sammy and Kevin can talk shit and fight and just beat the shit out of each other, but no one else can, right? Like, it's kind of like when, like a brother, obviously like a brother-brother or whatever type of relationship like that. If you talk shit on your brother, that's okay because that's your brother and you could talk shit on him, but you're not going to stand for anyone else doing so, right? And I would love for them to go that direction with Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn on SmackDown, because obviously with the Usos, especially on this past, you know, if you watch SmackDown, and if you're not, like I said, you definitely should be now, Jay especially does not like Sami Zayn at all. Jay Uso does not give two shits about Sami Zayn. He wants nothing to do with him. He's doing the absolute best he can to bite his tongue and just do what he's got to do because he's, you know, he falls in line. But he can't stand Sami Zayn. He was like, you need to prove yourself, you know, blah, blah, blah. Sami did. He stepped in front of the Claymore kick on Friday. So I think that's just another way to kind of, and who was that from? Drew McIntyre. Who showed up here tonight? Drew McIntyre. Who did Drew McIntyre face? Kevin Owens. I'm just saying it could be a nice little thread and tie-in. So yeah, because I would love to see Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn face off against the Usos, and I would love to see them actually win the tag team titles. I think that'd be a fun story and a nice, heartwarming story for Owens and Sami. So yeah, I think that could be fun going long term there. After that, we got the drama between Seth Rollins and Matt Riddle. They were setting up Matt Riddle. They were setting him up to look like he was at home, or obviously just not at the arena. That's where they were doing like a satellite interview. Rollins was in the ring, pretty much just mocking Riddle. Nothing new here. Riddle interrupted with a bro from the big screen, said that he had an update on his condition, and said that he's actually cleared. And that next time I see you, Seth, it's going to be on. And Rollins asked if it was going to be like the last time when he got the better of him, which is at SummerSlam. Riddle stood up and said he was actually happy to hear that and Rollins said that next time he sees him, he's going to stomp the remaining 3 brain cells out of his head. Riddle stood up and said that he was happy to hear that because he wasn't in his mom's basement, as Rollins had referenced earlier, and that he was actually in D.C. and that he was on his way to kick his ass. Riddle made his entrance, they fought, they brawled at the ringside, and that was pretty much it. Just another continuation for their match at Clash at the Castle. Moving on here, guys, we did have an appearance finally from Veer Mahan versus a local jobber. Beat dude in less than 2 minutes. And that's that, you know. It was pretty much straight to the point. I'm glad they didn't have Veer barking at Sarah Schreiber backstage like they did whatever the last time we saw him was, or whatever that shit was, growling. It was just really fucking strange. Like, what are you doing? Like, just no. Moving on here, guys, we had another backstage segment with Bayley, Io Sky, and Dakota Kai. They ran into Dana Brooke, who is the 24/7 champion, still holding the title. So unfortunately, that fire earlier did not include the 24/7 championship. So sorry to bust your bubble there, guys. But Dakota Kai kind of got in her face and said that she should be scared. Lastly, this is not the main event, which and it got me last night too, watching it. They had Bobby Lashley and AJ Styles, and they've been putting it up with various video packages throughout. One that was narrated by Corey Graves, which is very well done. But when this match came on, I was like, oh, all right, it's time for the main event. And it was only 10 o'clock, or like right around 10 Eastern time. So I was like, oh, shit, here we go. But not that I was dreading like a whole nother hour, but it was just like I felt like it was the main event. Which, again, shout out to them for building it up. But this match was very well done, and kind of what you would expect from an AJ Styles and Bobby Lashley match. Still blows my mind that was the first time they faced off against each other. But we did end up getting a Bobby Lashley victory, defeating AJ Styles in roughly 21 minutes or so. The ending sequence wrapped up with Styles going for the phenomenal forearm finisher, but Lashley ran under him. Styles landed on his feet, ran to the ropes, only to get speared and pinned by Lashley. So I was kind of surprised that it ended with just a spear from Lashley and a clean victory there. But, I like a clean victory, and it's AJ Styles, and AJ Styles can bounce back, so it's nothing that's going to break him. But during the match itself, The Miz and Ciampa had made their way to ringside, obviously to try to interfere. During the most important part of this melee, though, there was kind of commotion going on, similar to last week. There's a part where Ciampa climbed onto the apron and backed down when Lashley spotted him to kind of just distract him. Miz T's kind of going after Styles, but he also was distracted when a hooded Dexter Loomis hopped over the barricade. Security just mauled Loomis, right? Like it wasn't, I'm pretty certain it wasn't two actual, like, police officers this time. It was security, so it looks more, I still say last week, I don't know if the officers knew exactly what was going on, because you never see, especially, like, nowadays, maybe back in the day, but nowadays you never see actual armed, like, police officers, like, dealing with stuff like this, just because there's so many potential, like, things that could go wrong. But this week it was just the security team. They jumped the barricade, obviously, to get Loomis. They spilled over into the commentary team, knocked the guys out of their chairs. Jimmy Smith, like, I think there was a part where Saxton was trying to pull Jimmy Smith out of the way. It was just, poor Jimmy. I wonder how he's enjoying his job, like truly on a week-to-week basis. I'm probably more so now more than ever, right? But I really like him. He's a nice, he doesn't stand out in a bad way or a good way, and I love him. He's just kind of like that nice middle man. So I think he's doing his job very well. So shout out to him. But security ended up cuffing Dexter and pulled him out, and we never really saw Dexter after that. Then that kind of continued with the match itself, and then, like I said, we led to the ending sequence there with Bobby Lashley retaining the championship. But it was a fun match. It was really good. I love the clean finish. I love the interference that didn't actually cause a DQ here. It was just setting up the motion to obviously introduce Loomis. And I'm so here to see what they do with Loomis going forward. The next matchup was the 24/7 champion Dana Brooke facing off against Dakota Kai. This match wasn't even 2 minutes. It was what it was. Dana Brooke did her handspring elbow thing. Dakota Kai shoved her face into the middle of the turnbuckle and then hit her with the running boot to the head and pinned her. It was non-title, thankfully, so Bayley's group does not have to get that bullshit interjected in them. It was what it was. That was a good way to put the Kai over. After that, we had Dolph Ziggler making his entrance to face off against Theory. And guys, again, another very, very good match. I'm not going to go hold for hold here, but especially in maybe the last 3 to 5 minutes of the match, and this was probably maybe a 15-16 minute match or something like that. I love the reversals and the transitions into the different wrestling holds, and I loved everything about it. Dolph Ziggler does not get the kudos and the respect that he deserves for his in-ring talent alone and his selling ability. I just really enjoyed this match, guys. It's a good dynamic, and I hope they run it back. But again, I was very, very happy to see that we got another clean victory here, and it ended with Theory catching Ziggler, who was going for the Famouser. He reversed that, dropped him with the A-Town down, and got the 1-2-3. I loved it. It was hard hitting. Theory took his selfie at the end of it, and it was what it was. It was just a very good match. I was kind of surprised to see this in the main event slot. I'm not really sure why. I don't know what other counter TV programming was going on at that time, like specifically like around the 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock hour. But I'm sure they obviously had their reasonings for it. But guys, again, another solid episode of Monday Night Raw. Another reason to look forward to next week. They set up some matches going forward. They're going to be in Toronto. The one I'm looking forward to most, obviously, is Edge versus Damian Priest, just to see that reaction from the crowd. I'm very, very interested to see the continuation of Dexter Loomis. There's just so many things to look forward to. And even with Austin Theory, I hope he gets his first name back. But I'm very intrigued to see Triple H's vision for the Money in the Big briefcase and what he does with Theory going forward. But with that being said, guys, thank you so much for checking out today's episode. We will be back as soon as possible with another episode this week. If anything else breaking happens, we'll, of course, be with you guys sooner rather than later. Next show is probably going to be recapping AEW Dynamite. So be on the lookout for that in the next couple of days. But like I said, if anything else happens in the meantime, or I have some free time and just want to shoot the shit with you guys, I'll drop another episode for you. I am looking to enhance the show. Been kind of doing some more research past couple of days on that and kind of dive into that more so this weekend. So just be on the lookout for that. But thank you guys, as always, for downloading and streaming the show and following and liking wherever you do so. I truly appreciate it. If you're listening on Apple, if you don't mind just either subscribing and hitting that 5-star or whatever you feel the star rating should be, I appreciate all feedback, so no pressure one way or another. So either do it that way, or feel free to let me know what you guys are thinking on Twitter, at ASHMANNS for me personally, and the show's Twitter page is at @KickAshPodcast_. So take care, guys. With that being said, have an awesome day.